the most popular form of Satanism you will find today, is really quite atheistic and materialistic, and it's deliberately poking fun and mocking people for rejecting the body, for rejecting the pleasures of life. So if you look online and you search Satanists, you'll very often find people who are members of the Church of Satan, and many of them are atheists. They have no spiritual belief at all, but they like the aesthetic. They like to dress up in a certain way. They like to wear certain symbols. Some of them are practicing magic, but the majority of them aren't. And the majority of them are more like they're more like American libertarians. Yeah, like the far Republican Party, like the far right of the Republican Party, like absolute freedom. So like they'd be in favor of no gun control. They're in favor of alcohol. They're in favor of sex. They're in favor of all of these things. So it's, in some ways, it's quite life affirming, and they're often not bad people. I know quite a few of these people. They're fine, but it's very modern, and it's a little superficial. So that was the modern Satanism that occurred in the 60s, and that's the dominant flavor of modern Satanism. If you look at if you're looking at practitioners, but because this group was so materialistic and really quite atheistic, a lot of them were atheists, there was a reaction to that, and there is a smaller group of people who are theistic Satanists. So they're people who worship Satan as a deity. And again, there are a range of people here, but most of them are actually not bad people at all. They're people who are just ultra liberal, ultra libertarian. They're not doing awful things. And then we have a third level. So the third level is what you'll find if you get your information from Twitter and YouTube, yeah? And this is where there's an idea that there is an elite group of bad people who are doing bad things because they are Satanists. The Illuminati, like all of that nonsense that we as magical practitioners then have to deal with because we're...
You said Illuminati is nonsense.
I mean, yeah, that's a thought at the back of my head throughout this podcast that you're going to be called satanic at the...
always.
You're already called satanic.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Like, it's not a problem because they simply don't understand the techniques. Now, I could describe myself technically as a Luciferian. So what I do with my reading of the Bible is I would split the ideas of Satan as the opposer and Lucifer as light. And I would say that my tradition is to do with the Luciferian aspect, is to do with freedom, is to do with beauty, is to do with a body, is to do with light, yeah? As opposed to the satanic aspect, which is to do with the dark, is to do with transgression, is typically linked up with suicide. So that's I've never come across any of this.
Before we move forward, simple question for you. What do you want for humankind?
I want us to fulfill our destiny and return to the stars.
When you meet people or when you see other human beings, what do you feel?
I love human beings. Yeah, I think human beings are great. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's move.
Yeah, but it's important to do because these technical terms get turned into a mess very, very quickly. Certainly, there are what people would understand to be Satanists in the world, by which I mean people who worship a deity called Satan and gather together in small groups, do things. This is a black racket. Again, as I said, this is PD JPS on the side. This is something for a long time, and very often look into it.
Dead, bro.
It's intelligence services behind it. It is very useful to be able to blackmail people who are in positions of power. But as for an all-powerful
Revive him, revive.
conspiracy. Like, I have seen no evidence of such a thing. Small groups compromise, blackmail people in the elites? Absolutely. Global Satanism is a fantasy.
So the Illuminati is not controlling our world.
Unfortunately not.
Okay. I'm actually going for dinner with the Rockefellers at some point, and they're the name associated with the Illuminati.
Yeah.
They're visiting India. If I get to do a podcast with them, that's what I'm going to ask them. How do you guys feel about this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask.
Right?
Certainly there are people using power with those symbols and ideas in positions of power. Absolutely. But right, generally, it's the case. Like, generally, for shock value,
To be spoken about?
to be spoken about, to hold power over other people by appealing to those oppression, dangerous power.
We went to P. Diddy and Epstein. Do you think they were also involved in any kind of ritualistic practice?
I'm not aware that they were involved in any kind of ritualistic practice, but I think all humans tend towards ritual behaviours, but like a specific magical, organised process of performing ritual, I don't think those individuals were, no.
Gotcha. Okay. Your partner's in the room with us, and I was just telling her that I've manifested this conversation for years.
Wow.
And I'm not one of those people who believes in the power of manifestation. I think it is a thing, but again, in
Then how did you
the
manifest?
case of my culture, they say that only manifest the divine, everything else will follow. But in my heart, as a content creator,
And you are not divine. Wow.
someone like you for ages and have this exact conversation. It's one conversation that we split up into two parts. And is there a reason you choose to wear black?
Yeah. It's quite traditional in Western magical culture that if you're engaged in this kind of work, that very often you'll find that people just wear black.
Just wear black.
Yeah.
You just wear black?
I
Mark.
literally only wear black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could do the same in my code. I met an Indian tantric once who said that, if you're engaged with Kalima, you will naturally be drawn to black in color. So I see the pattern here,
Yes, there is.
right? You said that you had an ayahuasca experience in South America.
Yeah.
Now again, on the surface, for people who are not informed about ayahuasca, they'd assume that it's just a psychedelic substance. Is it a party drug? No, it's not. It's a powerful spiritual device that opens up access to other realms. Would you agree?
I spent a week in Amazon, about 2 days journey from civilization. Group of people.
Oh, no. Run.
I think Jack 5. I think we had 5.
Coming, go outside, run. Good, heal
We were
yourself,
very
heal
strict
yourself.
dieta, so we were. I dieted for a month.
It's okay, heal yourself, you can trust your vamos.
Coffee, no chocolate, no alcohol, no sex, no all of those requirements. And then while we were there, I did dieta with a plant called cat's claw. So I was drinking probably 4 litres of cat's claw a day and eating a very limited amount of calories in diet. So plantain, quinoa, maybe some
You're
some
upside.
fish, but like really quite a low calorie diet. And I enjoy the discipline, and I enjoy being in a space like that when I can devote myself to a serious piece of spiritual work. So I was in a
I can't come
in a
because
tambo
it's
by
so far.
myself. I went with my partner, but we were like separate
I don't think so.
the trip, and we were guided through the experience
Inside also
by
go one spot.
Go run, go run. They're
native
fine,
shaman,
they're fine.
a
Go
very
run.
skilled shaman who performed the rituals in the native fashion. So previously, a lot of the ayahuasca
Don't go inside, don't go
in the
inside.
West is through a Brazilian church called the Santa Daime.
Count on you.
And Santa Daime, they have a Christian approach to it. So they split up men and women, and they sing Christian songs, and they have a different method about the way they go about it. And I didn't want anything to do with that. That was not going to be my approach. So we went and we drank with the shaman, with a group of people who travelled out for it, including one of my dear friends who was recovering from some significant heart surgery. So one of the reasons that I went was to support him as he was going through his healing experience. And it's very important for me to be there and to help him with what he was going through. And what I gained from ayahuasca, and I've taken a significant number of other like mind-altering substances and drugs through my time as a magician. Like it's been part of my practice to explore these realms. But ayahuasca is very different. They describe it as a teaching plant. The experience of drinking the plant medicine and having the shaman singing piccolos, the sacred songs, and in charming the plant within your body, the spirit in your body, is an extremely powerful experience. So you'd spend the day in quiet contemplation, and you'd spend the evening drinking the ayahuasca, which for people who haven't experienced it is it's a difficult thing to drink. Even like a small shot glass of ayahuasca is a very bitter taste. And the effect of the medicine is also to make you purge, so you vomit and you pull things out of you. And as a magician, it was a real privilege to see a plant master
Coming
in
to you.
Amazon and his relationship both to the spirit of the plant and his mastery of the plant, and the way he could manipulate it internally inside a whole group of people all going through different kinds of healing crises was spectacular. I could see many parallels with the kind of work that I do. On a different level, it was to see another magical practitioner was fundamentally exciting. Again, in our previous conversation, when we talked about other entities and lower entities, having a shaman is extremely important to this experience, because drinking ayahuasca pulls in a lot of these lower entities, and you need a shaman to keep the space clear of these kind of spirits.
Have Kraber
And
find
those
the
kind
enemy.
of spirits, hungry spirits in the jungle, certainly came looking for food.
Wanted to feed on human emotion.
Yeah, they want to feed on human emotion.
So now it's talking some sense, huh?
And so I had a very good conversation with the spirit of ayahuasca,
Up
because
also go one
You got
spot.
Mother Ayahuasca,
yeah,
the
yeah,
female entity,
yeah, the
which is
female entity within it.
okay. I'll have to give some
Yeah,
context. here.
do.
Ayahuasca ceremonies are being studied by neurologists all over the world because they have found some scientific proof behind the changes that ayahuasca can create in a human mind. Secondly, the one commonality that everyone feels while doing ayahuasca is that they feel the presence of a feminine deity in many cases. I won't say everyone, but in many cases. And another commonality is the purge.
No, I had the same thing. I could feel my face running with tears, despite not feeling like any sadness. But the spirit of ayahuasca, you very much feel the goddess. You feel the spirit of the plant engaged with you in a way that I haven't found with any of the other plants or substances that I've used. She's a very particular spirit. And in that particular context of Yamasi, it's a very powerful experience. And as a Western magician, a lot of the things I do are to do with a lot of secrets. And she just like ran through my head and pulled everything out, went through everything, and it was it was quite funny because she was going through all of the symbols that I have in my system from Western magic, and she was kind of going, "Oh, this is new. Oh, what's this?" And it was kind of trying. I spent the first 3 days trying to build up a way for us to have a language in which we could communicate, because we were coming from such different worlds.
They say that everyone who does ayahuasca and encounters the mother views her in a different visual form. What was it for you?
I had a lot of serpents. I had a lot of snakes. She came with a lot of anaconda snake.
As in she was a snake herself?
Yeah, she was a snake. Yeah. But it was a very powerful experience. It's not it's not something that I will necessarily return to. I feel very privileged to have had the experience and the encounter, but that's not where my work lies. Okay, I know what my work is, but I think that the impact of ayahuasca on the spiritual development of the world is profound, and I think it's only just so.
Many human beings all over the world are going to discover ayahuasca over the course of their lifetime, but of course we live in a society where there's a lot of preconceived notions about mind-altering substances, because that's what we're doing, and in no way are we promoting the use of harmful substances like alcohol. And mind-altering ayahuasca can be harmful in excess, and if you are doing it in an unguided manner. You need a shaman to be able to do it. You need to do it in its purest form, and you need to do it with some kind of intention attached to your ceremony. My question to you, Peter, is that you've already interacted with beings from other realms. Other than Mother Ayahuasca, could you interact with beings from other realms as well?
Yeah, I think I think she's such a powerful spiritual encounter. I think you can shortcut years and years of personal work by going and learning from ayahuasca. But as you said earlier, there are dangers about the dangers of Western magic, and whether I'd seen people who had gone on for probably the worst person I've seen from a spiritual perspective was a woman who had gone and drunk ayahuasca and apprenticed with a shaman and taken a lot of plant drugs in that process. And to me, she was the most spiritually engaged person I've ever seen. So it is important to have a shaman, but it's also important to be aware that not all shamans have your best interests.
That was her mistake.
Yeah, she made that.
When we're talking about ayahuasca, we're talking about shamans. This is their version of tantra. They use plant medicine.
I don't have
Ayahuasca is DMT in the same way that cannabis contains THC. Now DMT can also be smoked in a synthetic form, and Joe Rogan keeps talking about this in his podcast. They say that everyone who smokes DMT enters a realm where they get to meet interdimensional creatures or beings, interdimensional beings that are not malevolent. And it's a very intense experience about 20 minutes, and then you come out. Have you done that as well?
No, but the problem that I see with DMT is exactly what you described. You're shocked as reality, and everything happens very quickly, and you come out of it, and it's very difficult to bring something back. And as a magician, like I'm always, with an experience like this, I always want to bring something back with me in that world to work on or to deal with. And I'm not sure that enables you to do that in a very effective fashion. Whereas the beauty of ayahuasca, what I found very helpful was the first maybe hour of having ingested the drug, you're in a very, you're in a light state where you can do a lot of work, You can get a lot of work done before the really powerful effects kick in. It's quite malleable at that stage. The corrosion, the songs, and you're able to process and do a lot of self-work in that period before things become much more intense. And I think you miss that with smoke DMT. I think it's just too rapid.
Are you comfortable sharing what your intention behind doing the ayahuasca was?
Yeah, I was doing a few things. One, as I say, I wanted to beat up on my family.
Bro, what the fuck is your aim, bro? You can't even kill this injured guy, bro.
Knowing my strengths and my ability to be there, to be present for him while he was going through that crisis. And what I found with ayahuasca was that
Fucking noob motherfucker, alter cunt.
I've been working on myself for a long time. So there weren't any...
Learn to fucking play properly, then talk shit, bro, motherfucker.
What ayahuasca was able to show me.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt, motherfucker. Go fuck your mother in your fucking house,
I
bitch.
learned some things about
Your mother will be raped by fucking dogs. Your mother and father will be raped by dogs on the street, fucking cunt. Fucking Muslim motherfucker.
jungle. But the most important thing that I probably learned from ayahuasca is that
Muslim
I
motherfucker.
already have my path.
Gotcha. It confirmed your reality.
It confirmed what I was doing.
What did you pick up about animals?
Well, I had a few experiences with some of the animals in the jungle. I won't name them just out of discretion. But the relationship that I had with the animals that I encountered in the jungle, both during the dieta and then subsequently during the ayahuasca experiences where they returned to me and taught me things, was extremely valuable.
You know, we consider snakes divine in India.
Yeah.
Again, Sanatan Dharma, we had, it's said that there was an ancient race of higher beings called the Nagas. And Nag in Sanskrit means snake. So they say that modern day snakes are actually descendants of those higher beings. But they've kind of almost like gone back on the evolutionary ladder. And it's kind of like what chimpanzees are to human beings, snakes are to Nagas.
Yeah.
So they're cousins, but little backward in the evolutionary ladder.
Yeah.
But Nagas themselves are believed to have left the earth or are on earth, but are evolved enough to keep themselves hidden. Perhaps in the oceans, perhaps deep inside forests. And they are revered. They are prayed to in some parts of India. And they're associated with the god Shiva. Which is also my personal deity. Like what Babylon is to you, Shiva is to me. Each Hindu child has their own favorites, and at different phases of their life, they're drawn to one more than the others. In my late 20s, I've discovered the power of Shiva in a very intense way, and there's a form of Shiva called Kal Bhairav, and they say that generally Bhairav is waking up in India again. It's been a deity which is slightly dormant. But it's a very powerful deity that eventually leads you to Ma or the mother. It can lead you to Kali, or at least the divine temple. Bhairav is represented by a black dog. So is Anubis, Egyptian deity, and a friend of mine, Rajesh Nandan, the expert in culture. He
Fucking
thinks that
noobs,
there's
man.
way too many parallels between Anubis and
Motherfucking
Bhairav
noobs, dude.
for them to be two different deities. He thinks that Bhairav expresses itself in Egyptian culture as Anubis. I'd love to know if you know anything about black dogs, because there's another plant medicine called Datura, which is also in Sanatan Dharma, associated with Shiva. It's used by advanced Tantra practitioners and Aghoris, but it's a very, very, very dangerous plant medicine to use.
Yeah.
I will let you take this tangent forward wherever you wish.
Yeah. So let's do Datura briefly. All of the solanaceous alkaloids, the alkaloid that you find in Datura, you find in a range of the European witchcraft plants. So you find it in belladonna, henbane, datura. These all have this same problem. The difficulty with using them, as you point out, is that the doses in them are very difficult to get correct. Like the difference between like one flower and another, one seed and another, it can be significant. They're a very, very dangerous plant to consume because they're disassociative. So it's very difficult to tell the difference between what's happening around you and what's real and what's not real. So you can get yourself into a lot of danger with these plants, and I would never recommend people to ingest or work with the plants in those ways. But clearly they've been used in witchcraft traditions, and I know people who use them in limited forms, like as a salve, as a topical salve. The other one is mandrake, mandragora. You can extract mandrake in wine. I've worked with mandragora extracted in wine as a ritual tool. But these are quite rightly like put to one side as dangerous plants. I'd recommend if people are on a spiritual path that they look at ayahuasca rather than looking at those kind of things. Black dogs.
In the same way that people who experience ayahuasca experience the female deity, they say that everyone who has experienced datura experiences the presence of a black dog.
Right.
So yeah, I'd love to know what you think of black dogs.
So we have black dogs in a lot of English folklore. We get a black dog appearing as a portent of like everything gets called the devil because we had all of our things leveled. But spectral black dogs are very much part of the English landscape. We've got hundreds of accounts of those over time.
What do you mean by spectral black dog?
They may or may not be real.
Ah,
They may or may not be real.
perhaps a spiritual being.
Perhaps a spiritual being.
In my eyes, it's an element of Bhairav or this amulet, or I don't know what the European equivalent deity would be.
Yeah, we don't have a Hecate is sometimes
We've got
associated.
45 seconds and a long
Hecate.
Yeah, Greek goddess of witchcraft.
Greek goddess.
People would traditionally sacrifice dogs to her at crossroads. That was the traditional offering.
Sacrifice dogs. Okay. You said that a lot of the European practitioners, will always keep a Ganesha murti.
Yeah. Ganesha is everywhere. Like it's very common for people to have it because he's so benefic that people gets everywhere, regardless of whether you're looking at Ganesh or not. He seems to be one of these gods that is out in the world and is happy to talk to people in different traditions.
In Sanatan, they say that any deity which has an animal face is easily reachable as compared to the deity.
Run, bro, run.
It's not so much about hierarchy as much as it is about accessibility. He's a very accessible.
Dude, run away, dude.
I've done countless podcasts on the subject of Ganesha. The 2 core learnings I have is that he is the remover of obstacles, and that's what Hindus pray to him for. And secondly, he's the deity of the lowest chakra, the root chakra, which allows you to ground yourself and be stable. So before we begin a large ritual like someone's marriage or a very large havan, it usually begins with a prayer to Ganesha to stabilize you and to stabilize the geography that you're in.
Yeah.
Similar to why you use Ganesha?
Yeah. That's what it gets used for by a lot of people. He's very popular. Very popular. I think partly because when you're exploring the Western tradition, which is strong in some areas.
Fuck,
we're strong in terms
man.
of magical books. We're weak in terms of like necessarily deity and people's connection to deity. So when people are looking for
This guy got 2 kills.
then they
What the hell?
Ganesh just fits this.
And fuck, even that knock I did get, bro. Come on.
Happy to do so, and so for people to have a statue and to make puja to just do small offerings, you know, sweets and incense and candles, and like it's a good benefic for people to have around. So he's found a place.
You know, most Sanatanis do not pray to Ganesha every single day. And you're a Western practitioner of European magic who prays to Ganesha every day.
What?
Not every day, but like I have Ganesha, and I burn candles from like most days. Yeah.
Got you. Do you use mantras as well?
I don't use mantra with them because I haven't been given a mantra, but I could use mantra with it.
So there are mantras which you need to be given
Yeah.
by a guru or someone who has practiced with the mantra, and these are tantric mantras.
Yeah.
You can't just use a tantric mantra and expect that it'll work, or it can actually cause chaos in your life if you use it. But there are softer mantras, easier ones that you can use.
Yeah.
So the common one, I'll write this down and send it to you, but it's a longer mantra.
Sure.
But I've always noticed that when you attach a longer mantra to a deity and you say that mantra with reverence, as well as after you've understood the meaning of it, your connection with the deity increases further, and the deity is even more present in your life.
Yeah. Well, that would be a wonderful exchange.
Yeah. The mantra's a little long. I'll say it if you want, because I also want to say it in this particular episode as a thank you to him.
Yeah.
Vakratunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kurmedeva, Sarvakayeshu Sarvada. In the pronunciation, just like mine.
Yeah.
So you with mantras, if you're saying it out loud, you have to get the pronunciation right. And ideally get it right even in your own mind.
Yeah.
But 108 times every day will cause that deity to come closer to you. 108 is a very important number when it comes to mantras. It's one entire mala for us. Mala is like a rosary.
Yeah.
And of course, then there's shorter mantras like Om Namah Shivaya, which is like the easiest mantra for Shiva. But you can also use Om Namah Shivaya to like meditate. So we just sit in meditation. That's a soft mantra. And then there's much more fierce mantras as well. And there's a spectrum. Yeah. So even I have not reached the most fierce mantras, but I have been given mantras which are not for everyone. Not fierce, but they're like kind of the beginner. They're the second level. And not for everyone, honestly. Causes a lot of it causes challenges in your material life as well. So it's testing your strength. If you're able to pass those tests, you'll come out good. And yeah, but Ganesha is a soft deity and very.
What is the soft
and very nice. It's kind of like
you're saying?
Imagine the relationship you have with at least for me, because in Sanatana you share personal relationships with the deity, and for me it almost gives me a younger sibling kind of thing. Though I know it's Ganesha, it's God, but there's a loving younger sibling stabilizing me, keeping me happy. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just like blowing away in my
No, it's perfect.
Yeah. They also say that emotions matter a lot in Sanatana. Are emotions a part of your magic?
Yeah, I think so.
How do you use emotion?
I think unless you're emotionally involved with something, it doesn't become alive. Like you have to engage every aspect of yourself with these things. So if you're not tapping into your emotions, if you're not allowing these things to rise out of you, then you're probably not practicing.
What else would you like to know from Indian culture?
I've got 45 seconds.
Like in your heart, you've been practicing magic for 30 years, but you're a lifelong student.
Yeah.
What are you trying to understand through Indian culture? Like how can Indian culture help someone like yourself or your community?
30 seconds to be somewhere else.
I think it helps to see an animistic,
Replicator there.
pantheistic, flourishing deity, an example of the way that people have a complete. It seems like such a full universe that you inhabit because of your understanding of the way that deities are ever present in your lives, are ever present in the way that you do your lives, the way that you approach ritual, the way that you approach every aspect. It's so wonderful to see when you live in a largely secular culture, to see people with that level of practice and difference that you have a culture that contains many different kinds of practitioners, all of whom are walking their own paths towards something. So the example of India, I think, is so powerful for us in the West to see what our tradition could become, because we're really probably only 100 or 200 years into like the rebirth of the Western tradition, coming out of like the wreckage of a broken Christianity and trying to understand who we are in the world and what we have to offer. And I think we can learn from all cultures because we're all in this journey together.
One of the things we celebrate in India when it comes to Sanatan Dharma is the fact that it's survived over hundreds of thousands of years. And that's what all of us do. I do believe that your culture is hundreds of thousands of years old as well. Probably we originated from the same origin point on some level. Perhaps some of your ancestors were as Sanatani as my ancestors. But I believe that over the course of time, some pieces of your cultural story have been stripped off or destroyed. And I think that people like yourself are going to rebuild those lost cultural pieces of tradition. Peter, I invite you to India. I want to thank you for this spectacular conversation because honestly, being very transparent with you, I almost feel like I got a message from Ganesha saying, hey, this is a good
Wow, man.
So just feel like stopping.
It's infuriating, dude, listening to this guy. Why do I do this to myself?
It's very rare that I do 4.5.
Okay, enough of that. Bloody talking as if it's just like a piece of shit stuck in his nose.
You're welcome.
What am I supposed to do? Pug, kaise jane wala hai? How are you going to go to Predator if you can't play more than one match in rank? How are you going to improve? Are you ever going to improve in any bloody... This was 4 days ago. British Tantra and Hindu gods. This guy has two of them?
It's great for us to have an opportunity to find a common language and to clear up.
What are these stupid idiots doing, man?
If you're even remotely into video games, it's likely that you also saw The Witcher 4 showcase that just went live everywhere on the internet. And it was blowing everyone's minds with how gorgeous it all looked and how incredible the animations, from the way Ciri's cape falls as she jumps off her horse, to the way her facial expressions imitate almost lifelike human emotion as she talks to the trader in that showcase as well. I don't want to get it twisted here. I'm not here to call CD Projekt Red liars or try to start beef with them. I've already fought with their CEO in the past and proved their commitment to stuff like DEI even when they lied about it. But make no mistake, I still think that CD Projekt Red is a talented developer, and I do hold no ill will for the developers there that work there. But that being said, there is this deception amidst games from all the way back in the mid-2010s to sadly even now, where you're being sold something as one thing, but then it quickly ends up becoming something else once you actually started to play it. So, The Witcher 4 looks amazing, at first glance at least. Everything just looks insane. Apparently the demo is running even on a base PlayStation 5 as well, making players gasp, oh my god, this is running on a PS5? Well, imagine it on the PC or more. And as CD Projekt Red put it themselves, as seen here from PC Gamer, The Witcher 4 is promised to be the most immersive and ambitious open-world Witcher game ever, which I mean, god, I hope so, because the last one is now 10 years old at this point. And I still think Witcher 3 looks amazing. Then again, I'm not crazy about graphics either way. I care way more about stability and performance myself. Your game can look god tier, but if it runs horribly, what's the point? CD Projekt Red is also no stranger to having weird launches. Even The Witcher 3's launch was full of corrupted save files and bad performances across the board and plenty of bugged quests. Of course, now the game is amazing and runs buttery smooth. Again, though, that's 10 years later, but still, even Cyberpunk. I don't think I need to tell you how that game ran at launch if you played it, and comparing Cyberpunk today to what it released as in 2020 is honestly two very different games. I don't know about you, but I refunded Cyberpunk when it first released, and I didn't replay it till the PS5 version next-gen update finally released. And when you look at how Cyberpunk was marketed with its beautiful CGI trailers, like that first one where they show the woman in slow-mo and the guy has a gun to her head, wow, that looked amazing. Then you saw how Cyberpunk released, and it was like CDPR.
That is true, man.
Everybody. I wager those days are hopefully behind them. I would hope anyways.
What is wrong with this guy, man?
It'll run well and look great, which is why this big Unreal Engine 5 showcase of Witcher 4 was such a wow moment. Look how great this all looks. Wow, they're showing you how you can see every pine needle on a tree. Incredible, and it's a tech demo. Yeah, hate to break it to you guys, I don't enjoy pissing in people's cereal all the time, but unfortunately, it is and the Witcher 4 showcase was in fact, oh man, not real gameplay at all. And everything we just saw when he said it was just a vertical slice of not what the game will actually be like, but instead simply...
Oh, what a bunch of noobs, man, bro. What a bunch of fucking noobs, bro.
Gaming Gold here reports
Dude, fast.
the Witcher 4 tech demo doesn't represent the Witcher 4 itself. Clarifies CD Projekt Red. Oh boy, it showcases the powerful foundation we're building in close collaboration with Epic Games to push open world design further. So everything we just saw, all the gorgeous foliage, those beautiful horses, all the back riding looks so good. The way Ciri's hands move when holding a coin, it was all just a tech demo in the end. Well, that kind of sucks, doesn't it? Look, okay, I don't want to be a downer, alright? This isn't the first time we've seen a tech demo for a game. However, the fact that CD Projekt Red and the game's media were pushing this initially not as a tech demo, but as a real, tangible first look at how Witcher 4 would look has left people, well, soured, to say the least. I kinda had a feeling this wasn't legit because firstly, Ciri looks, how do I put this? She doesn't look current gen. Does that make sense to you? Like, she looks uncannily almost CGI trailer looking. She looks so detailed, it doesn't feel like it could be in a game. Well, now we know that is exactly the case here too, but you know what I mean. Again, not crapping on CD Projekt Red, because I know someone will think that I am. It's just, can we stop doing this, guys? Projekt Red, because I know someone will think that I am. It's just, can we stop doing this, guys? Can we stop making promises to players when it's so evident you're not going to be able to reach what you're showing them? Like, I get it. Sure, you want to excite people, and especially by showing footage like they did here, it will entice the investors with the heavy pockets to want to give you money so you can have more resources. Look, I get it. I really do. But all my initial excitement for Witcher 4 has yet again been kind of dropped.
Oh, no, I'm not excited. No, I'm excited. I'm dropped excited. I'm not excited.
Like I said, they did this so obviously with Cyberpunk 2077 too. Forget how the game looks now. Go compare how the trailers looked for Cyberpunk around 2020 versus when the game launched on PS4, Xbox One, and PC at the time. This was the moment that many players obviously lost trust in CDPR because they actively lied to them about selling a product and profited from it. For a good example of this, when Cyberpunk released and it was bad and it ran like crap, there was a lot of finger pointing that was just going around at that time. You had articles like this 2 years after the Cyberpunk fiasco from Forbes saying, report claims that Cyberpunk 2077 bugs weren't caught because a QA company lied to CD Projekt Red. So, allegedly, 2 years after CDPR went through what they did with Cyberpunk, eventually the blame was shifted onto a contract company named Quantic Lab. According to what Upper Echelon Gamers, a YouTuber who broke this story back then, said, according to a 72...
Upper Echelon is a shit shill,
I will
man.
not bore us both by reading all of it. of
Upper
course.
shill on.
Quantic Lab, which QA'd Cyberpunk, lied to CDPR allegedly about the size of their staff in order to keep the contract on the game because they needed the money. They also lied saying that they were full of senior staff members who specialized in bugs and QA when in actuality, they were just junior staff at best. And apparently Quantic sent daily reports to CDPR of thousands of bugs that they were mostly nothing and failed to actually report on the real issues in the game. So why I'm bringing this up is simple. It's that companies usually aren't very forthcoming with how things go within their operations. And especially when things go horribly bad, fingers start getting pointed. I mean, you can even go look up the original trailer's gameplay, not CGI, for Witcher 3 and then compare it to the game. Even then, what CDPR showed was not exactly what people got. It actually reminded me a lot of the Watch Dogs E3 demo when I saw Witcher 4. Remember when Ubisoft showed that off and everyone lost their collective minds about it? Everyone went, oh my god, this is it. This is going to be the GTA killer. The industry has finally done it, people. Look how incredible the lighting effects are and the vehicle damage. Wow, Watch Dogs is so amazing. This then led to Ubisoft having to admit publicly to everyone that the Watch Dogs E3 trailer was also a tech demo and not the real game. And we know that because the collective disappointment from players when Watch Dogs released for real was, what the hell is even this? And why does it look terrible compared to that amazing trailer that you guys showed, and that's why they all bought the game for in the first place? It even led to IGN all the way back in 2014, mind you, that's 11 years ago. My god, with this article titled, "Are E3 demos intentionally deceptive?" And the answer to that is yes, absolutely they are. I find these trailers to always be too good to be true, and that's exactly what's happening right now with Witcher 4. It just proves that this industry, time and again, is just a flat circle. They loop, they keep doing the same things over and over again. Now when I look at this Witcher 4 first look, I don't really feel impressed now because none of it is real. And by real, I mean it won't be like this in the retail version when you buy it. I raise an eyebrow, especially during the part of the tech demo where Ciri speaks to that black market trader guy by the pier. First of all, that trader's face, I don't know about you guys, but it is insanely detailed. Like way more than you would think a normal random NPC or quest NPC, I guess, that Ciri likely talks to like once or twice would be animated like. But what really gave it away for me was how Ciri's facial expressions looked during the scene. Like, look at this. Look how she flips the coin and moves her body during the scene. It almost felt too good to be true. Like, this would be something doable maybe if the game was like 3 hours long, like a Hellblade or something. But for a supposed God knows 80+ hour open world RPG game, unfortunately, that's probably just not going to happen, and that sucks. Maybe CDPR will keep this moment in-game and try to render it in the engine, but generally speaking, I would wager that most NPCs will just stand like most NPCs do in games, and sure, they could look better, at least I hope so, but the reality is that video games are very expensive to make, and there's no way that Witcher 4 isn't costing at least, I don't know, maybe $300 million plus. I would be shocked if it was even less than that, because now, you're again setting up players for this amazing reveal that looked way too good to be true, and you know that you can't reach that. And looking at comments of people finding out that it's a tech demo over actual gameplay, I mean, it tells you everything. Like Kada here, who said, just killed all the goodwill they were getting. It really is just this. Because now people aren't going to look at your new showcase and go, wow, Witcher 4 is going to look like this. That's insane. They would be developing this game for like 10+ years if they managed to hit this quality bar consistently, especially if this game is like 80+ hours long, and I frankly don't think that CDPR is going to do that. Of course, you also had idiots in the comments saying stuff like this. Don't think it will hurt The Witcher 4 if it's stable on release. Downgrades should be expected. Great. We're already having apologists coming to CDPR's defense to defend them. Leave the multi-million-dollar company alone, they say. Look, I get the flack for calling out the industry, but it has to be said, man. Stop lying to people. You know it's not good to look this way. Like this user who said, wow, and then when it's fake. Yes, exactly this. It's just not a good look, guys. I'm telling you, the only reason they did this was to drum up hype and hopefully pull in more investors. And I mean, okay, makes sense. It'll work probably, but unfortunately, this is just how AAA is. It's not just CDPR. And just proves time and again that they just, as an industry, man, just have to stop doing this. Let's just call it what it is. It's false advertising. I prefer it when games just use actual in-game footage to promote their games. A good, more recent example, maybe? Go look at Final Fantasy XVI. The trailers for that game, even when it was first initially revealed, were in-engine. They were pulled from the game. Every scene in any trailer was something that tangibly happened in that game when you bought a copy. So there was zero lying on display there. Even the fight in the beginning of 16 when, Shiva and Titan are duking it out on the battlefield. That is in the game, just as it was in the trailer. That's how you should market your game, because then you're not going to be called liars or deceivers. But CDPR has done this not once, but like, what, 3 times at least now? And the other problem is apparently the Unreal Engine 5 is giving them trouble if rumors are to be believed too. So here's Daniel Vavra, he's the director of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and here's him talking about Unreal Engine integration, which is what Witcher 4 is running on, by the way, and how, from what he heard internally, CDPR is pulling their hair out and having a really hard time making anything work in that engine. Hopefully, this clip that I'm about to show you doesn't get copyrighted, so here, please watch.
Mě zajímalo, proč jste vybrali CryEngine tuhle filmu.
Že v té době nic jiného to neutáhlo takhle.
Unreal nebyl ještě jako.
A on teda ve skutečnosti to Unreal to neutáhne ani teďka. Jako to vypadá. Jako já jsem se bavil s borcema, co dělají Witchera. A nebo ze studií, co prostě se teďka snaží dělat nějaký open world hry prostě na Unrealu, protože na Unrealu jako vlastně žádný open world hry moc teď. No ne, no právě, že to není úplně pravda, že jo, všechny ty velké hry mají vlastní enginy, které Assassin's Creed všechno je na vlastní engine. A teďka prostě CD Projekt jako přešel na Unreal, přičemž měli vlastně podle mě dobrý vlastní engine. No a slyšel jsem takový zvěsti, že teďka jsou z toho dost jako, že se neudělá chybu. No, bavil jsem se s jedním člověkem, jehož jméno nemůžu samozřejmě říct, a říkám mu, tak co Unreal? On říkal, super, už tam máme udělaný kus jako nějaký krajiny, a to říkám, no to ještě ne. Poznáme to, když je to bylo zpátky a prostě furt to nejde.
Super, jako.
Teď jak udělali vlastně
který má jako co,
jednoznačně, tak jako samozřejmě v tom Unrealu máš obrovský tým, který má strašně moc prachu, že jo, a každá píčovina tam jako může na to nasadit 10 lidí, že to budou dělat, ale vlastně jejich dlouhodobý problém si myslím je, že jako vždycky jako něco ukážou, ono to vypadá strašně super, a pak když to chceš použít,
Visage.
Blood cries out from the soil of our world. From ancient battlefields to modern war zones, humanity has drenched the earth in the blood of brothers and strangers alike. Why do we glorify war, empire, and pride over faith and mercy? What if the roots of this violent world run deeper than we ever imagined, back to the first murderers? What if we are all the children of Cain, not of righteous Seth? In hushed circles of forbidden history, an astonishing claim emerges. Noah, the father of post-flood humanity, was descended not from holy Seth at all, but from cursed Cain. Through Methuselah and Lamech, Cain's blood flowed in Noah's veins, ensuring that Cain's legacy survived the flood. This would mean the whole world today continues Cain's line, a lineage marked by murder, pride, and godless power instead of faith and humility. Imagine the shock the biblical good guys may have lost, and the inheritance of a fratricide runs in our lives. It would explain much why we build ruthless cities and arson on the world, why we celebrate wealth and conquest over piety, why violence stains every page of history. Cain's world is all around us. We call it civilization. In this audio journey, we will uncover the hidden truths and esoteric evidence behind this claim. We will delve into biblical genealogies, apocryphal texts like Enoch and the Gospel of Judas, and Gnostic myths of creation. We will trace the works of Cain's children through time, from the first city and the first sword to the towering
6 scores left and still minus 15. Wow.
We will see how evil was co-opted
bro.
by Cain's legacy, how the very God worshipped by the masses might be a demiurge of war, and how the murder of Jesus fits into this dark lineage. Prepare for an investigative journey that is bold and immersive. We will speak in the language of symbols and prophecy, reaching back to the dawn of humanity. This is Forbidden History, a tale whispered by Gnostics and hidden in plain sight in Scripture. By the end, we will confront a chilling climax, that this world is not the kingdom of heaven at all, but something closer to hell, the domain of Cain. Yet a glimmer of hope remains, a forgotten remnant. The true line of Seth still seeks the true source beyond this world's shadows. Listen and remember, the blood on the ground has a voice. It cries out for truth. The true lineage of Noah in the book of Genesis, 2 genealogies unfold side by side. 1, in chapter 4, traces the descendants of Cain. The other, in chapter 5, traces the line of Seth down to Noah. At first glance, they seem like separate family trees, one ending in ruin at the flood, the other surviving through Noah. But look closer, the 2 lineages mirror each other with uncanny similarity. The names echo as if in a distorted reflection: Enoch, Irad, Jared, Methushael and Methuselah, Lamech, even 2 Enochs and 2 Lamechs appear, one in each list. Scholars have noted that most of the names in each are variants of those in the other, as if they were different versions of the same underlying tradition. In other words, genealogies might hide a single story split in 2, a story later brought back together when Genesis was compiled. Could it be that the righteous line of Seth and the cursed line of Cain were originally one intertwined bloodline? Could Noah's ancestry have been quietly rewritten to make him a son of Seth, when in truth his forefathers were Cainites all along? Consider Lamech, the father of Noah. Genesis 5 verse 29 recounts that when Lamech named his son Noah, he prophesied, "Out of the ground which the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the toil of our hands." What a strange thing to say. Which cursed ground needed relief? God had indeed cursed the soil after Adam's sin, but especially to Cain God said, "When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength." Genesis 4 verse 12. Cain's line is doomed to wander, unable to farm the earth fruitfully. Yet Lamech looked to Noah to lift the ground which the Lord hath cursed. Was Lamech speaking as a descendant of Cain, longing for deliverance from Cain's curse? The possibility sends a shiver down the spine. It suggests Noah was born from Cain's suffering lineage, not from Seth's blessed line. If Noah truly sprang from Cain through a convergence or confusion of the genealogies, then all humanity after the flood carries Cain's mark. In a symbolic sense, the ark preserves the seed of the murderer as the new progenitor of man. Our suspicions find support in extra-biblical tradition. Who was Noah's wife? The Bible never names her, but ancient Jewish law provides a tantalizing answer. Noah's wife was called Naamah, and she was none other than the daughter of Lamech of Cain's line, the sister of Tubal-Cain. Naamah is explicitly mentioned in Genesis for as a descendant of Cain, the only daughter named among Cain's children. Later commentary like Genesis Rabbah and Boston different Naamah from Seth's line to avoid the implication. That Noah married a Cainite bride. This means the blood of Cain literally means the earth. 8 souls were saved from the flood, and at least one of them, perhaps Noah's wife, or even Noah himself, if genealogy is merged, carried forward Cain's heritage. As one scholar succinctly puts it, there is no historical proof of Noah's wife, but some Jewish traditions name her as Naamah. The very presence of this tradition hints that ancient readers saw a link between Noah's family and Cain's line that later redactors tried to obscure. Piece by piece, a forbidden picture emerges. The separation of Cain and Seth's lines might be a theological mirage, a way for the compilers of Genesis to claim that the righteous survived through Seth, while the wicked perished. But under the surface, the texts betray a hidden unity. It is ****. The second father of humanity was in fact a descendant of Cain. The world after the flood was repopulated by Cain's offspring. All of us, descendants of a fratricide, heirs to a cursed legacy. This haunting possibility sets the stage for everything that follows. Violence and frightful tensions to make tragic sense. The works of Cain's dog, then understanding Cain's legacy is essential to understanding ourselves. What was Cain's mind known? Genesis paints a brief but vivid sketch of Cain's descendants, and it is a story of human civilization's first leaps, entirely divorced from God's guidance. Cain, nevertheless built a city in nature after his son. Genesis the verse 17. Imagine that the first city on earth is founded by a fugitive fratricide, a monument to human ambition trying to defy divine punishment. Cain's children then became pioneers of worldly arts and industries. Jabal is called the father of those who dwell in tents and herd livestock, essentially inventing nomadic herding and ranching. His brother Jubal is the father of all who play the lyre and pipe, inventing music and the arts. Their half-brother Tubal-Cain is the forger of every instrument of bronze and iron, the first metalworker and toolmaker, and by implication, the first to smith weapons. Their sister Naamah, later linked to seductive singing in mystical lore, is associated by tradition with idolatrous songs or enchantments. In short, the children of Cain introduced tent-dwelling and animal husbandry, musical culture, and metallurgy, the cornerstones of civilization. They were innovators of worldly life. Yet notably absent from Cain's lineage is any mention of worship or righteousness. As one commentary observes, here was a father of shepherds, and a father of musicians, but not a father of the faithful. Ye hear our devices how to be rich and mighty and merry, but nothing of God, of his fear and service. Cain's race was clever and industrious in all things material, but nothing of God. They focused on wealth, art, technology, the flourishing of culture, while forgetting the Creator. The Bible implies that, while Seth's line, in chapter 5, began to call on the name of the Lord, Cain's line busied itself with forging an earthly legacy apart from God. Cain's great-great-grandson Lamech even broke the sanctity of marriage, becoming the first polygamist by taking 2 wives, Oda and Zillah. We see a portrait of a worldly, self-reliant society, enamored with beauty, skill, and violence. And violence, indeed, was the dark undercurrent of Cain's lineage. Lamech, descendant of Cain, husband of Oda and Zillah, stands as a braggart of bloodshed. In the so-called Song of the Sword, Lamech boasts to his wives, "I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for bruising me." If Cain is avenged 7-fold, truly Lamech 77-fold. Genesis for verses 23 to 24. Here is prideful violence elevated to a virtue. Lamech invokes his ancestor Cain's divine protection. God had worn vengeance 7-fold on anyone who harmed Cain, and declares that he, Lamech, has outdone Cain. He killed a youth merely for injuring him, and dares any to challenge him under threat of 77-fold vengeance. This is the ethos of Cain's world. Might makes right, retaliation knows no bounds, and violence is a point of pride. The first war song in Scripture rises not from Seth's descendants, but from Cain's. The sword is sanctified by Cain's great-grandson in a taunt of uncontrolled revenge. Notice too the connection between technology and violence in Cain's lineage. Tubal-Cain, as the master of bronze and iron, undoubtedly crafted weapons, swords, knives, spearheads, enabling war and bloodshed on a greater scale. it is fitting that Lamech, father of Tubal Cain, sings of murder. His son has forged the tools to make murder more efficient. In the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text revered in early Jewish and Christian communities, we find a striking parallel. The fallen angel Azazel is said to have taught humanity the art of metallurgy and weaponry. Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and how to work them. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. In Enoch's account, forbidden knowledge of metalworking and ornamentation leads directly to increased sin and violence on earth. How eerily this complements Genesis. Humanity's first metallurgist is a Cainite, Tubal Cain, and immediately we see his family immersed in violence and pride. Technology without wisdom breeds corruption. The children of Cain, guided not by God but by their own skill and the whispers of fallen angels, unlocked the secrets of music. But instead of uplifting the soul, these arts were used to glorify human prowess and sensuality. Tents and herds led to wealth. Music led to indulgence, metallurgy led to weapons, and weapons led to murder. This blueprint of civilization, urbanization, specialization, technological progress, and violence was established by Cain's progeny long before the flood. And if Noah's blood carried Cain's line, then that blueprint sailed across the ark and re-established itself in the post-flood world. Is it any wonder that after the flood, humanity again built cities and towers, forged empires and swords, celebrated wealth and power? We simply rekindle Cain's legacy, which was latent within us. Modern humanity's brilliance and brutality can be traced back to those antediluvian pioneers. We are the heirs of Jabal's herding, today's ranching and farming roots, Jubal's music, all arts and entertainment, Tubal Cain's metallurgy, from the Bronze Age to the Silicon Age. We Lamech's arrogance and Cain's violence. War is sacred violence from time immemorial. Humanity treated violence. The first murder was fratricide, Cain spilling his blood in jealous rage, yet Cain feared retribution and received a mysterious mark, protection from God, as if even God acknowledged the power of vengeance. Genesis verse 15. Cain's act introduced murder into the world, and strangely, it did not result in Cain's death. It became a boast, almost a divine one. Cain was avenged sevenfold. I shall be avenged 77-fold. Here we see the seeds of sacred violence, magnified under divine sanction. Lamech invoked God's promise to Cain as a license to kill without punishment. In effect, murder was valorized, blood vengeance was enshrined. This is the dangerous idea that would echo through history. Killing can be justified, even holy, under the right circumstances. After the flood, as Cain's legacy persisted in humanity's heart, war and violence became rituals. Every ancient culture told tales of war gods and divine heroes in battle. From Mesopotamian kings to Greek warriors, from the conquests of Israel to the campaigns of Rome, men marched to war believing God was on their side. They consecrated their weapons and built altars on battlefields. War became a sacrifice of swords, a means of power. This is not Cain's spirit with God. Cain's killed brothers and God's faithful later nations killed their earth filled with violence, just as it did before the flood. Genesis 6 verse 11. It is as if the flood never truly wiped out the way of Cain. In fact, it couldn't, for Noah's very family still carried on. We are told that Noah's descendants spread, but soon they united in pride to build the Tower of Babel, the tower reaching to the heavens to make a name for themselves. Genesis 11 verse 4. This arrogance, so reminiscent of Cain's, by God's language. The first kingdoms arose, Nimrod, a mighty and other cities, the beginnings of imperial conquest. Brad's very name of rebellion. The cycle of Cain has resumed. Strong, weak by force. Across millennia, humans have continued to enact sacred violence. We hallow our wars with rhetoric of destiny or divine mission. Think of the ancient Israelites believing Yahweh ordered them to conquer Canaan in holy war, slaughtering men, women, and children under the ban. Think of the Crusaders marching under the cross to reclaim holy lands with the sword, or conquerors from Genghis Khan to Napoleon to modern armies, all convincing others that providence blesses their battles. In truth, behind all these stands the shadow of Cain's hand gripping a weapon, the idea that spilling blood can be righteous, even required. As the writer René Girard observed, violence is the heart and secret soul of the sacred. Humanity's first instinct after the fall was to sacrifice. Abel sacrificed the firstlings of his flock, and Cain brought the fruits of the ground. But when Cain's offering was rejected, he sacrificed his brother instead. Could it be that ever since, we have been reenacting that primal sacrifice, killing our fellows as a grotesque offering on the altar of pride and power? Make no mistake, war is a ritual on the altar of Cain. The blood of millions cries out from the ground like Abel's, but the world refuses to listen. Instead, we glory in it. We erect monuments to conquerors, we write epics of war. How many generals and kings have been venerated as if divine? How many young men sent to kill and die with prayers on their lips? This is Cain's legacy. He turned murder into an acceptable means to an end, first for himself, then for his offspring. By Lamech's song, we see murder turned into poetry. By the time of empires, we see genocide rationalized as destiny. Even today, nations justify nuclear arsenals as security, and insurgents justify terror as martyrdom. Different creeds, same practice, giving violence a sacred rationale. One might object, didn't God intervene to stop this? The flood was meant to curb violence, Genesis 6 verse 13. But if Noah's lineage itself carried the corruption, the purge was incomplete. After the flood, God instituted a covenant allowing humans to execute murderers, Genesis 9 verse 6, an attempt to restrain unchecked killing by law. Yet even this principle was perverted. Instead of eliminating violence, humans wielded the sword of justice unjustly. Execution became oppression, war became constant. The God of Israel himself, in the Old Testament, is portrayed as a warrior leading his people to slay enemies. This raises a chilling question: which God were they following into battle? Was the true, loving Creator truly delighted by piles of corpses, or were they following a darker entity, mistaking it for the highest God? To answer this, we must peel back another layer of the hidden history, the identity of Yahweh in these tales. For if Cain's spirit pervades the world, perhaps it did so by corrupting even the image of God that he worshipped. Perhaps the God of war that so many prayed to was not the true source. Yahweh what if the deity that the one who accepted Abel's was not the ultimate God, but a lesser divine being? This is the startling assertion of certain esoteric and Gnostic texts. In these writings, the true supreme God is pure light and spirit, the true source of all goodness, but the creator of the material world is a blind, arrogant entity often called Yaldabaoth or the Demiurge. This false god thinks himself supreme and demands worship and blood sacrifices. Some Gnostic scriptures identify the Old Testament Yahweh with this demiurge or his offspring. In the secret book of John, we read a radical reinterpretation of Genesis. Yaldabaoth deceives Adam and Eve, and even rapes Eve, to sire his own offspring. Eve gives birth not to godly children, but to Cain and Abel, the spawn of the demiurge. The text says Yaldabaoth raped Eve, and in time, she bore 2 sons. Elohim was the name of the first. Yahweh was the name of the second. Yaldabaoth deceptively named the 2 Cain and Abel. According to this account, Cain and Abel were not simply Adam's sons, but the incarnations of Elohim and Yahweh, 2 spiritual powers generated by the false god. Cain, dissociated with Elohim in the text, is thus literally a child of the lower god, and Abel, associated with Yahweh, likewise. Then Adam had intercourse with Eve and sired a son like the Son of Man. He called his son Seth, who was modeled on the heavenly realm. Seth, in this myth, carries the spark of the true God, while Cain and Abel carried the taint of the false god. To ensure humanity remained blind, Yaldabaoth forced the humans to drink from the waters of forgetfulness so that they would not know their true origin. This shocking alternative genesis reveals what the Gnostics fervently believed: the world as we know it is ruled by a counterfeit god. The violent, jealous deity who favored one brother's sacrifice and cursed the other, the god who flooded the earth and sanctioned wars, that is Yaldabaoth, not the true source. In the secret book of John, the names Yahweh and Elohim, both biblical names for God, are given to the archonic sons of the demiurge who became Cain and Abel. The Gnostics were telling us that the very religion of the masses had been subverted. When humanity, steeped in Cain's mindset, prays to a god of wrath and victory, they are praying to the demiurge, not to the hidden true God of love. As Jesus says in the Gospel of John, "You are of your father the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning." Those who perpetuate murder as sacred are following the murderer from the beginning, Cain's father, the devil. In Gnostic terms, the devil is not a horned tempter in hell, but the archon of this world, the false god who created a flawed world and masquerades as the Almighty. Consider the Old Testament portrayal of Yahweh, a god who walks in the garden and doesn't know where Adam is hiding, who delights in Abel's animal sacrifice but rejects Cain's vegetable offering, who floods the earth in wrath, who thunders on Sinai with laws and punishments, who commands wars to claim a promised land. The true source, the ultimate god of pure spirit, has no need of blood or territory. But a lower god, a demiurge, would behave exactly like Yahweh, demanding loyalty, smiting enemies, jealously declaring, "I am the only god, have no other gods before me." This is the hallmark of the demiurge arrogance in Gnostic thought. Indeed, some Gnostics identified the demiurge with Yahweh explicitly, calling him Sarklas or Yaldabaoth, who ignorantly boasts of being unrivaled until wisdom, Sophia, rebukes him. In one text, the Apocryphon of John, Cain is even called an evil power and is linked with Yahweh, while Abel is linked with a lesser deity named Elohim. In another, the Apocalypse of Adam, Cain is described as a son of Yaldabaoth, utterly negative. The picture is consistent. Cain and his lineage belong to the false god's domain. They were not guided by the true source, but by the earthly, violent god of this world. If this is true, it recasts the entire legacy of Cain in a cosmic context. Cain, and by extension humanity after him, was essentially following the wrong god. The demiurge granted Cain a mark of protection, encouraged the sword song of Lamech, reveled in the sweet savor of sacrifices, Genesis 8 verse 21, that Noah and others offered, and later led nations in battle frenzy. This false god is a bloodthirsty puppet master who instilled in the two, Cain and Abel, authority so they could rule over the dead world he had created. Under his influence, war and pride became virtues. People thought they were serving the Lord, but too often they served Yaldabaoth, the lord of the material world, the author of confusion and violence. This concept was so heretical to orthodoxy that the early church expunged Gnostic Gospels and branded their teachings heresy. But remnants survived. The Gospel of Judas, for example, portrays Jesus privately telling Judas that the God the other disciples serve is deficient. Jesus laughs when he sees them praying to your God, implying it is not his true father but a lower entity. He even says to Judas, "You will sacrifice the man that clothes me," indicating Jesus' death was necessary to free the divine spirit from the material flesh, a very Gnostic idea. The Cainite Gnostics, so called by church fathers, went further, allegedly venerating Cain and Judas for opposing the false god of the establishment. Irenaeus, an early heresy hunter, wrote that the Cainites venerated everyone who opposed the god of Israel, including Cain, and that there are holy gods. Such a sect truly existed as he described. It is clear there was an undercurrent. Saw Cain's story very differently, not as a simple villain, but as part of a larger spiritual drama of rebellion against a false deity. Some Gnostics even considered themselves the spiritual descendants of Seth, the third son of Adam, believing that they, and not the mainstream, carried the seed of truth. In their myths, Seth's lineage survives in secret as bearers of the divine spark, while Cain's material lineage rules the visible world. All of this esoteric frame of our journey, the world that glorifies war, crime, technology without wisdom, and murder, not guided by the truths of life. It is a continuation of Cain's legacy under the influence of a false, lesser god, the demiurge. This God of this world blinds the minds of the masses so they cannot see the true God, as the New Testament itself indicates for verse 4. Thus humanity at large languishes in a spiritually fallen state, thinking its violence and empire building are sanctioned by heaven. In reality, they are shackled to Cain's curse, chasing power in a dead world. In the next part of this narrative, we will see how this pattern tragically played out even when the true source himself intervened. The murder of the divine messenger. 2,000 years ago, a young prophet from Galilee burst onto the scene, preaching love, repentance, and the imminent kingdom of God. Jesus of Nazareth spoke of a God of mercy he called Father, a God very different from the vengeful spirits of the age. The sick, uplifted the poor, and challenged the hypocrisy of the religious elite. Many believed he was the promised Messiah, come to deliver mankind. In truth, as Christians believe, he was the son of the true source, the incarnate Logos, entering directly into the lion's den of Cain's world. How would the children of Cain respond to peace? With the same pattern written in their blood, they murdered him. Recall the archetype. Cain slew Abel, who was righteous, out of envy and anger. Now fast forward, the worldly powers, the Jerusalem establishment and the Roman state conspire to slay Jesus, the innocent one, out of envy and fear. The Gospels record that Pontius Pilate saw the Sanhedrin had handed Jesus over out of envy, Mark 15 verse 10. The crowds, stirred by their leaders, demanded crucifixion. When the chance came to spare him, they chose instead a murderer, Barabbas, to go free. Think on that, the people preferred to save a killer and kill the Holy One. Cain's choice, repeated. As the Apostle John wrote, do not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous. In Jesus, the pure righteousness of God shone so brightly that the evil in men could not tolerate it. The corrupt leaders, children of the wicked one, recognized in Jesus the same threat that Abel's goodness posed to Cain. And so they struck. Jesus himself identified this lineage of violence. To those who opposed him, he declared, "You are of your father, the devil." He was a murderer from the beginning. He also lamented that Jerusalem had killed the prophets for generations. Indeed, he personified the true source's voice, weeping, "O Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you." The pattern is unbroken. Whenever a true messenger of God arose, Cain's descendants moved to silence or slay them. The crucifixion of Christ was the ultimate sacred murder, an event so cataclysmic that it lays bare the spiritual truth of this world. On a Friday afternoon, outside the city walls, the world murdered its creator in flesh. Consider the profound symbolism. The innocent blood himself hung on a cross, echoing Abel's blood crying from the ground. Humanity, instigated by the forces of darkness, offered up the Son of God as a sacrificial victim. And here is the dark irony. They believed they were doing good. The high priest Caiaphas argued, "It is better for one man to die for the people." John 11 verse 50. In his mind, killing Jesus was a necessary sacrifice to preserve the nation, a holy duty. The Romans executed Jesus as a rebel to preserve their version of peace, Pax Romana, again, violence as order. Thus Jesus' death was enabled by the very mindset we have traced, that violence can be righteous, that an innocent life can be extinguished for the greater good of the system. It was Cain and Lamech's logic cloaked in priestly robes and imperial law. Yet in that darkest moment, a light of understanding can dawn. The crucifixion unleashed the powers. As the ICR commentary notes, the devil has been seeking to slay men before they can become to accomplish it. Jesus fell victim to those children of the devil, the human instruments of evil, precisely because he offered a path to make us children of God instead. His radical message threatened to break the chains of Cain's legacy. If people followed Jesus, they would renounce violence, forgive their enemies, and worship a God of love rather than the demiurge of power. This could not be tolerated by the entrenched powers, spiritual or temporal. So the forces of Cain did what they always do, they killed the threat. They nailed the true source's emissary to a tree, mocking him as he bled. From one angle, it seemed that Cain had triumphed over Abel once more. The light of the world was snuffed out by the darkness, or so it appeared for 2 days. But the Gospels proclaim that on the third day, Jesus rose from the dead, breaking the cycle. In Christian understanding, this resurrection was the defeat of the demiurge and the death principle. The innocent blood shed by Cain's world became the very means of redeeming that world. In effect, the curse of Cain was challenged. There is another way than endless vengeance. When Jesus returned to his disciples, he did not call for revenge on his killers, but instead sent his followers to preach repentance and forgiveness to all nations, even to those enthralled to the false god. It was the ultimate call to exit Cain's shadow and rejoin God's path. Tragically, even after this cosmic event, the struggle was far from over. Many embraced the some of Cain's patterns, refusing to fight back when persecuted, sharing possessions without greed, worshipping a godless spirit. But the legacy of Cain is tenacious. Soon it would infiltrate even the world, unable to practice Christ's legacy, will try instead to co-opt. And thus we witness the next great turn of this saga, the rise of an earthly church that claimed to follow God, but often acted in the very spirit of Cain it was supposed to transcend. The church thrown at the false god. In an ideal story, the teachings of Jesus would have ushered in the kingdom of God on earth, a reign of love, non-violence, and truth. And for a time, in small pockets, it was so. The earliest Christians shunned the sword, calling themselves pilgrims in this world. They were persecuted by the Roman Empire, suffering as martyrs rather than taking up arms. It seemed that perhaps Seth's lineage, the forgotten faithful, had reappeared, spreading light quietly under the nose of Caesar, the new Canaanite ruler. But then a dramatic twist changed the course of history. The Roman Emperor Constantine converted, at least outwardly, to Christianity in the 4th century, and suddenly the persecuted faith became the empire's official religion. The church moved from the catacombs to the palaces. And with that shift, the values of Cain's world stood in battle, wearing a Christian mask. The institution that grew, the church in its imperial form, often betrayed the very gospel it preached. Instead of humility and simplicity, it embraced power and opulence. The church acquired lands, hoarded wealth, and donned the robes of state. Bishops became princes, and eventually one bishop, the Pope, claimed dominion even over emperors. In time, the church wielded the sword as readily as any king, launching crusades that drenched the Holy Land in blood, conducting inquisitions that tortured and burned anyone of doctrinal purity, and crushing any heresy or dissent, including Gnostics and other groups who preserved alternative teachings. The persecuted became persecutors. How could this happen unless the old gods of Cain had taken seat in the church's highest ranks? One of the most haunting images from the Bible's finest, Revelation, is the vision of a gaudy woman, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. She is drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony. The seer marks the earth of the church, for she is bedecked in purple and scarlet, colours of royalty and priesthood that is intoxicated with killing the very saints of God. Many commentators across history have identified this symbol with a corrupt church. Indeed, during the Middle Ages, dissenters like the Waldensians and later Protestants would point to Rome as crying Babylon when they saw the wealth and bloodshed. The whore of Babylon in Revelation was drunk with the blood of the saints and martyrs of Jesus, a chilling description that came true as the official church executed true believers who opposed its worldliness. The false god, the demiurge, the spirit of power, found a new throne in the church's hierarchy. No longer did he need to openly oppose Christ. He could distort Christ's teachings from within, convincing Christian leaders to act just like Cain while believing themselves righteous. So the church became, in many ways, a false god itself. People began to reverence the institution and its leaders as infallible. Kings bowed to popes. Ordinary folks trusted that participation in the church's sacraments guaranteed their salvation, even if the churchmen were corrupt. This is idolatry, the very thing the true source for bad, but it happened subtly. The medieval church in particular presented itself as the only path to God, effectively placing itself, an earthly power structure, in the role of God. In doing so, it accumulated massive wealth and political influence. The worship of wealth, the worship of God, magnificent cathedrals filled with gold and art rose even as peasants starved. Did not Cain's descendants do the same, building lavish cities and monuments while estranged from God? One can scarcely tell the difference between a worldly kingdom and the medieval ecclesiastical empire. In those dark ages, the line of Seth, the humble seekers of the true source, survived only in hidden pockets, in monastic communities focused on prayer and charity, or in secret circles of mystics, some labeled heretics, who pursued an early experience of God outside the iron dogma. The rise of the church as a worldly power is one of history's great ironies and tragedies. It was as if, after failing to stamp out the true light by killing Jesus and his early followers, Cain's legacy adopted a new strategy to co-opt the light, distort it, and use it for domination. The result was a prophecy where crosses adorned armies and priests blessed cannons, a mockery of what Jesus intended. When European conquerors colonized other lands, they carried both sword and cross, subjugating in the name of God. One can imagine Cain's ghost smiling piety, violence and greed. Yahweh the Demiurge, the false god of this world, was effectively enthroned in St. Peter's Basilica, receiving the obedience of humans who thought they were serving Christ. Yet we must be careful. Within that corrupted church were always true souls as well, protesting and reforming, calling it back to holiness. Still, by and large, for over 1,000 years, the church militant acted as just that, the militant, often indistinguishable from any secular empire. It became drunk with the blood of the saints by persecuting those who held onto the pure gospel. It set up idols, not statues of Zeus, but idols of authority, tradition, and wealth that people effectively worshipped. In doing so, the church repeated Israel's error. Remember how the Israelites demanded a king and later fell into idolatry and injustice, patterns criticized by their prophets. The church followed suit, even to the point of slaughtering Christ anew in the person of his followers. Truly, this world is hell, and the church is its false god, a daring statement, but one that echoes the lament of many oppressed by religious hypocrisy. However, in more recent times, as the church's direct power waned, Cain's legacy found new expressions, especially in the modern worship of wealth and technology. The next section will examine how, even as explicit religious violence receded, a new altar of Mammon rose for humanity to bow to, extending Cain's ethos into the materialistic age. Mammon, the modern altar of Cain's world. In the 21st century, many societies claim to be secular, no longer driven by overt religious zeal or divine right kings. One might think the influence of Cain's cursed lineage would fade as we embrace reason and humanistic values. And yet, look around, what does our modern world worship? In place of Baal or Zeus, the gods of today are named money, power, and technology. We may not sacrifice goats on altars, but we sacrifice our time, our health, even our fellow humans on the altar of profit and progress. The ancient spirit of Cain, jealous, acquisitive, restless, thrives in the modern economic man, in the ruthless tycoon, in the corrupt official, in the exploiter of earth and labor. We have simply traded swords for stocks, but the conquest continues in another form. Jesus once taught, you cannot serve both God and mammon, money. The Apostle Paul warned, the love of money is the root of all evil, causing people to wander from the faith and pierce themselves with many sorrows. Observe how prophetic that statement was. For love of money, forests burn and oceans choke with waste. For love of money, families break and nations go to war. For love of money, modern humans have erred from compassion and are riddled with anxiety and grief. The Bible's admonition remains true. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Under Cain's influence, we have constructed a global system that glorifies wealth accumulation above all. The wealthy are idolized. We literally call them idols or tycoons, words once associated with gods and lords. The poor and meek, whom the true Christ blessed, are often trampled, much as Cain likely scoffed at Abel's humble shepherd life. Technology, too, has become an object of near-religious faith. We strive to conquer disease, aging, even death itself through science, echoing Cain's attempt to master the ground's curse by building and inventing. Yet our technology, unmoored from divine wisdom, constantly outruns our morality. We split the atom and created bombs that can annihilate millions. We engineer marvels of industry and drape the sky in smog. We connect the world with digital networks but spread misinformation and hatred faster than ever. Knowledge without God brings corruption, as the Book of Enoch implied. Indeed, our era's breakthroughs often serve Cain's old aims, domination and self-glorification. We race to be the first, the richest, the most powerful, nations and corporations locked in bloodless, and sometimes bloody, competition. It's telling that the business world often uses war metaphors, hostile takeovers, market conquest, and celebrates its killer instinct. The spirit of violence transmuted into economic aggression is still the spirit of Cain. Even our cultural heroes reflect Cain's lineage. We adore celebrities, wealthy, proud, often living scandalously, while often mocking the humble, the devout, the peacemakers. We cheer the anti-hero, the one who breaks rules to get ahead. This is Cain's character being lauded in our stories. Meanwhile, faith is ridiculed or commercialized. Many houses of worship have turned into businesses themselves, preaching a prosperity gospel that equates God's blessing with monetary gain, as if mammon were God. What could be more Cain-like than twisting religion to serve greed? It calls to mind Lamech's boast turned into a sales pitch, promising 77-fold return for those who follow the formula. However, amidst this feverish worship of wealth and power, an unease grows. Mental health crises, loneliness, and meaninglessness plague affluent societies. The soul starves while the bank account grows. We see billionaires building personal fortresses